Good morning, everyone. My name is Eduardo Maia, and I work at the Portuguese Football Federation. I am here today to interview Pete Hewisson on the theme accessible ticketing. Pete has over 15 years experience in ticketing systems and operations delivery in major stadium events. During this time, he has worked on hundreds of large-scale sporting events, which has taken him to 16 European stadiums and 9 countries to deliver overseas ticketing operations. He is currently the product director for Allocate. Peter, welcome. Hope you are okay.
Morning, Eduardo. Thank you. Thanks for having me.
So I'm just going to do a bit of an overview on why accessible ticketing is so important. So a report from 2018, State of Access, revealed that ticketing is still far from being accessible. In terms of numbers, it showed that 80% of people that completed the survey had experienced troubles booking accessible tickets. 70% felt discriminated against when trying to book accessible tickets. 80% gave up on buying tickets on occasion due to the difficulty on booking access, and 10% consider taking legal action against the platform or clubs. By these numbers alone, it's pretty obvious that it can be frustrating to book an accessible ticket. What does it mean then to have accessible and inclusive ticketing? There are a few variables to take into account. First, it is important that tickets are sold through different channels. For young people, it might be easier to use an online ticket platform, but for an older person, it might be more comfortable buying it in a physical location or through a phone call. Then, ideally, there should be different categories of tickets as well as equal ticketing policies. And of course, the different channels through which the tickets are sold must be accessible, because if a club only sells tickets on their website, but the website is not accessible, that will turn out to be a bad experience for the disabled supporter buying the ticket. And also I'm going to talk about the typical access barriers when buying tickets from online ticketing platforms and websites. Not going into much detail, most of the websites still do not comply with the web context accessibility guidelines. So it's easy to find barriers like the lack of captions or subtitles, low contrast, or just complicated and distracting websites. Lastly, I'd like to give you an idea of how much the demand for accessible tickets are growing. 94% of accessibility tickets for the 2018 FIFA World Cup were sold. 94% of all accessibility tickets of the Bundesliga were sold in the 2018-2019 season, and more than 700 disabled fans attended each game of the Russian national team. And this is a very important point, since this growth shows that this can be a win-win situation, because the clubs and national teams can benefit by selling more tickets, and the disabled supporters can benefit by being able to watch more games in the stadium. So Pete, I will then jump to the first question. If you, I don't know if you want to introduce yourself first, talk about a little bit about yourself.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thanks, Eduardo. And thanks for the introduction. Yes, just to recap, I've worked in stadium operations within ticketing systems and ticketing delivery, access control operations for quite a long time. for both football and for concerts, which are very, very different in terms of delivery and of course the overall user experience of which, of course, accessibility is a huge part.
Okay, fair enough. I'm just going to say that it was very hard for a cafe to be able to arrange people to come and be part of this panel. So that as well demonstrates just how much work there is still to be done in accessible ticketing. So jumping to the first question about fan experience. So from your experience working in football and concert and ticketing, what does the process of ordering accessibility tickets generally look like?
Well, I suppose first to reiterate that that process differs greatly between sport and between concerts. We're here to talk about football today, of course. And the process will differ from stadium to stadium, from organizer to organizer, but certainly there are commonalities, and certainly there are areas of frustration. So going back to your question, I think the first thing, and interestingly, we were in Manchester in another conference last week, and there was a disabled fan on stage, and he was saying the first part of the process is actually understanding who holds the accessible inventory to the event in the first place, who is selling them, and how do I buy them. That in itself is sometimes a challenge, of course. Eventually, in most cases, the call to action here is a phone number or an email. And what follows is often a process of providing evidence of disability, and in turn a validation process. And of course, this sometimes has to be done in person, sometimes via email, sometimes by post. Of course, once all of that is then done, there's then often another interaction required to process the payment, and then the ticket fulfillment after that. When does the ticket come? You know, and those seem to be the traditional processes, which is in real stark contrast to that of a non-disabled fan.
So a non-disabled fan, in contrast, would just go to the platform or the website, click a few buttons, and the interaction is done. Right?
Exactly. It can be over within a matter of seconds, within a few clicks, a quick registration process, choice of location, choice of price, purchase the ticket. Delivered certainly this year. We've obviously seen a shift to NFC ticketing. That whole process can be done in sort of 60 seconds for a non-disabled fan.
Comparing that with a lot of steps for a disabled fan, although the step of proving that you are in fact a disabled person cannot be skipped at all. That has to happen. Yeah.
Of course, and that finding that balance between removing unnecessary barriers, whilst at the same time ensuring the integrity of that inventory management and protecting those seats from people that are not eligible for them.
What do you think is the best way to do that sort of balance?
Well, that's the puzzle. That's the puzzle, and that's something that I'm personally focusing on quite a lot, and it really is striking that balance. But you say rightly so, that validation cannot be skipped. It's about how do we make that validation as easy as possible? How can we perhaps introduce some kind of standardization that's recognized by, recognized by the industry and the different sectors. And there are people doing work on that. I've had an interesting conversation last week about that. It's not easy. If it was easy, people would do it. It's not easy, but I think with the right dedication and the right focus, we can certainly really transform this.
So, and what are the main sources of frustration for disabled fans with regards to ticketing systems and purchase journey? What do you think?
Mm-hmm. During the purchase journey, I think I think a lot of what you hear, certainly with concerts. I know we're not talking about concerts, but they are often held at sports venues. It's who. How do I buy these tickets? How do I buy them? Where is the phone number, or where is the email address? Or how do I do it? How do I even engage in the process? And that's a frustration. Of course, then with the evidentiary element that you're talking about, there are multiple interactions which can go over. They can go on for weeks and weeks and weeks. Again, frustrating, that this can't be done in one sort of one process. And again, I think by nature, when you are forced into using a traditional phone sales channel, there are waits, right? There are long waits, and of course these phone lines are only open in working hours. And disabled people work, right? So all of these and these are the commonalities in frustrations. And disappointingly, as the years move on, these frustrations are the same. They don't seem to change very much. But of course, things like this and the work we're doing and the collaboration with disabled fans is what it's all about in raising awareness. And in 2021, we should really be using technology a little smarter than we are in this industry.
Truly. So you'd say that it's much easier for someone that usually goes to the same stadium and it's already into the process and knows where to call, when to call, or how it works, in contrast with someone that wants to go to the stadium for the first time. That's the person that will encounter the most barriers then.
Yes, of course, and there are ticketing systems and services out there where once you've been through this evidentiary process and validation, once you've been through it once, you don't have to do it again. And sales channels like the standard website then do become accessible to you. But it really is the first-time visitor or the traveling visitor. And we know, that the first-time visitor is so important because that visitor, based upon that experience, can become a lifelong fan or not. And a lot of that will hinge on that initial experience with the club or with the stadium. And one bad experience can cause a lot of anxiety with people, and for the rest of their life, they might decide they prefer to stay at home.
One bad experience at the beginning is enough to just take you off the experience at all.
Yeah, certainly. And even engaging in that process, we find people say it's some people are intimidated by that process and just don't engage with it in the first place. So rather than have to provide evidence of my disability, for example, they would rather not.
Justifiable, of course. Okay, then. talking now about involving other people, about the potential improvements and solutions. What do you think about involving fans in the process of creating or improving an existing ticketing system?
Mm-hmm. Including the fans. I mean, including the fans, including. Yeah. It's absolutely critical. You know, that collaboration. It's you know, it's how do I understand the customer experience without that? I don't have a disability. The software developers here don't. My product design team, they don't. So how do we know what we're building? How do you do that without the collaboration? It's absolutely vital to me, and I think for far too long the product the design of software products has been down to developers who are trying to just guess what that experience is like. And certainly, you know, there are guidelines, right? There's web accessibility guidelines, of course there are, and that's great, and that's a great help. And you hear the odd anecdote, but you know, that true collaboration is something that I'm unwavering on. We're in the business of building products to deliver experiences. And how can we possibly do that without the consultation of the people using the system? You know, inclusivity it's an easy word to say. It's an easy word to write down and spell. It's come on, let's get real. Let's get real. And when we talk about consultation here, we're not talking about an arbitrary meeting every few months. We're talking about that entire design process. We're talking about the developers going to the games to live and breathe this experience. And we're not going to get it right first time. Of course we're not. But, you know, we stand a much better chance by really, you know, including everybody. You know, you ask 100 people, you will get 100 different opinions. You know, it's not about that. It's, you know, and I suppose that's sort of the job of people like me, is to make a decision, because we're not going to please everybody. You know, but by collaborating throughout the entire design process, we stand a much better chance.
Yeah, and taking into account that there are a lot of different disabilities with a lot of different necessities within, it becomes even more complex, and the necessity of hearing feedback from the people becomes even more important.
Of course.
So another logical step would be to involve the DAOs into the discussions with the ticketing department.
Involve who, sorry?
Involve them, the DAOs, the disability.
Yes.
Because some of them manage hundreds of tickets requests from disabled fans instead of the ticketing department, which why is this the case? And do you think that's the right way to go?
I mean, firstly, certainly in the UK, the DLOs, access officers, clubs still use different names. We know the teams we mean. They're doing great work. You know, some of them they're doing really great work, and they have had a lot of sort of investment from the clubs and focus on experience, certainly over recent years to when I sort of first started working in these environments, and people have a lot more support. You know, and we're seeing things, you know, we're seeing things like sensory rooms now that you never would have even considered 10 years ago. Of course, the audio descriptive commentary, the assistance, you know, there has been a lot of focus. I think going back to your question, why do they deal with hundreds of ticket requests? I think it's, you know, stadiums are difficult to learn, and like you've already intimated to the vast array of disabilities and access requirements. It is quite a lot, and it is a skilled job. And certainly you need your access officers to be, to be aware and fully understand the sort of requisite legislation around this and the Equality Act and, all this kind of thing. It is a skilled job. I think the systems don't help. The manual processes certainly don't help. And part of what we're really trying to do when we talk about transforming these ticketing operations, we're not just talking about the fan, we're talking about the users inside the business. We're talking about the DAOs and the DLOs and all the access guys and the event support guys. How do we free up their time to really focus on the service, and not the processes? So again, I think it's a little bit of a mixture of having that skill set. And that experience and that knowledge and workload, I think.
So you think that going forward, they have to be involved, but they have to be free from not necessary work involving steps that can be automated and not take up important time for them to do useful things in the field. Is that it?
Yeah, I think so. And removing barriers from those people, and we're by no means saying replace this personal connection. This is not what we're saying. We're saying allow them the time to really focus on that by how can we predict parts of these processes? If we can predict them, can we automate them? How can we bring that relationship closer together and sort of knock down these barriers? Yeah, certainly. And again, to reiterate, that a lot of the work that you'll see if you look around, LinkedIn and club websites, the work by the access teams is fantastic. In the UK, I have limited experience in other countries, but certainly in the UK, there's a lot of great work being done.
And now going to the solutions. What makes ticketing in football and sports different to standard product sales online? And what can clubs learn from e-commerce?
Well, I think ticketing and sporting, it's very emotional. It's very it's an emotive thing, and it's also very complex. From wanting to go to the game to purchasing a ticket to where do I park? What are my access requirements? Can I queue? Can I climb stairs? Do I need a personal assistant? Do I need an assistance? There's so many variables. It's not like if I want to buy a book, I can go on Amazon and I can buy a book with one click. There are more variables. What can we learn? I think as system builders, what can we learn from e-commerce? I think that focus on user experience and that user interface design, that's certainly very, very important to what we do. You don't see it so much, or certainly within ticketing and related processes, it seems to be behind. Whereas with sort of other modern software development, it seems to be almost more about the experience than the features or the functionalities. I think there are lots of learnings to take from that user experience subject in general.
But for the user experience to be the best possible, you need a lot of information about the stadium as well. So if you can give all the information necessary for someone, let's say someone that is a wheelchair user, they'll need to know where to go, where they can move within the stadium. Is that information easy to get from the clubs in order to for someone to be prepared in not have to go 2 or 3 hours in advance to be sure that when the time of the game comes, he's already at this place. So the amount of information that you can give the supporter in this case, it's vital, isn't it?
Absolutely, and we need to look into opportunities again with the systems. If the systems, if we know people have accessibility requirements, then maybe we change the communications. A lot of clubs do real great work with sending supplementary information about accessibility. Again, it's that focus on where is it, making that obvious and making that intrinsically part of a ticketing purchasing journey for fans that we know have accessibility requirements. Or disabled fans in general. If they tell us what are those requirements, we can store them. If we store them, we can use them, and I think that's really the key to unlocking this user experience.
So it's meeting the requirements of the disabled fans with the facilities of the clubs, and be able to send that information to the supporters in order for them to know what to expect when they get to the place.
Absolutely, 100%. For non-disabled fans as well, we talk about overseas ticketing operations. What we learn over the years is that fans know what to expect. They deal with things, they deal with things better. Just in general, forget disability. Any fan, if they know what to expect, they enjoy the experience more. And if there is something a little bit uncomfortable, well, at least they know about it in advance.
Exactly, and that saves problems and just a bad experience, because if you know that something won't be as well prepared as you would like, you can prepare in advance and avoid any sort of trouble, and that goes for everyone. It makes sense. Okay, so you are currently working with a UK club and stadium to create a fully accessible ticketing service platform. Can you tell us more about the project?
Yes. So we're in a development partnership with the club. We're going to go live with version 1 April 2022, and the things that the product vision is pretty simple, right? It's to make a product that people love. That's it. Now, whether this is the guys in marketing who are trying to garner some business intelligence, whether it's the DAOs inside the club, whether it's the operations guys, trying to prepare the stadium, or the first time 10-year-old fan with a non-visible disability. It's and that's really what our focus is, and that's what this development partnership is all about. It's giving us the chance, the opportunity to work with a progressive thinking club, forward thinking club. And over the next three or 4 months or so, we are built we've built the foundations, the features, and the functionalities that we're going to use. Now we're building that user experience and that user interface, and ultimately the product that the fans will encounter online. And over the next few months or so, we will be engaging in that product design journey that I referenced earlier, together with the DLO at the club, their disabled fans, and building that network to really make sure as much as possible we do everything we can. And we're not just talking about web accessibility, we're talking about the journey for a personal assistant. We're talking about bringing that relationship closer between the club and the fan. Why can't we communicate through our account if we want to? Again, we're not talking about replacing the human interaction. We're talking about allowing those and affording those people more time to do that, to do the things that matter, not being bound by bureaucracy and manual process. And that's really, what we're all about. I say we're launching version 1, April 2022. That's not the end of the product. That's the beginning. And we will learn, and we're not going to get it right the first time. We're going to make mistakes. But we're committed to this process, and again, not just in accessibility and disabled fan, in everything, but this is really key, because this is what a lot of people get wrong, and we know that, and we know it's difficult. It's very, very hard. We know, again, if it was easy, people would do it, and we're not going to get it right first time, but we are committed, and that's why we like to be part of groups like this, and we want to really build that network, as large as we can, and really see if we can make a transformative difference in this area.
Do you think that after the bulk of the work and the problems are solved, it will be easy to replicate that to other clubs and stadiums? To replicate. So use the system you created for this club and stadium and replicate.
We're not creating it for a specific club or stadium. We need somebody to work with us while we build it, and that's what's very important. No, of course, this is part of the product, is that it can work across multiple clubs that have got stadiums that operate more than one team, or stadiums that operate concurrent events and multiple facilities. We may have a fan zone, we may have a first team, we may have a basketball team. It's, this is the point, again, going back to, let's make something people love. Let's try and build something that makes a real difference in how these modern clubs and stadia can be utilized, and maximize that fan experience.
Well, then we're going to follow up with some questions from the chat. Let's see. How can you improve accessibility of your ticketing system if you have an existing one? What could be some of the first steps?
I'm sorry, Eduardo, can you repeat that question?
So if you already have a ticketing system, how can you improve it? What would be the first steps on improving an existing system?
That's very difficult to answer. All ticketing systems are built differently, and without understanding that, you can't possibly understand how you can make changes to it. Without understanding how it was built, it's very, very difficult to answer. I think that's more for the sort of the DAOs and the DLOs, I suppose, to answer. I think the answer's there. If you've got limitations with technology, it's then about process, and those guys are the experts.
Communication between the people that use the service and the people that make the service, probably.
Of course, and I'm sure they do that. And again, as I've said before, they do great work, especially in the UK. The time is limited, and that is always going to be a problem if they have system limitations that force them through a lot of manual processes.
What advice would you give to a club that uses a third-party platform which isn't accessible but is out of their control?
I don't know. I don't know the specifics, and again, I suppose that's hard, isn't it? What advice can you give to somebody if they're using a system that's out of their control? that they have no influence over or ability to change. Again, I don't know the specifics of the situation, and again, probably one more for the DLOs and the service directors.
Okay, just checking. We have a comment here. Proof of disability should only be necessary when there is limited capacity of accessible seats, sold out venues, and when prices are different. Do you agree with that? Do you think there's always should always be proof of disability no matter what?
I mean, again, it's certainly a school of thought, right? We hear this language used a lot. We hear where there is an element of doubt. How can you ascertain an element of doubt without checking? I find that difficult, and of course, different clubs and different stadiums will have different policies, and certainly the concert industry, when decisions are being made by ticket agencies that aren't used to using stadiums or buildings, and promoters that aren't sort of used to it, or international promoters, policies are different, interpretations are different. Of course, in an ideal world, if I am a wheelchair user, should I have to prove my disability? But if you don't, how can I possibly protect a limited inventory from people using it? Or by, certainly with if you go and sell with a concert and you're selling 100,000 tickets in the first 2 hours, people will try anything to get a ticket, and people find the path of least resistance, right? And if they know, there's 20,000 people in the queue in front of them on the website, well, maybe we'll ring the accessibility line, because there's not many people on that. We see this time and time again, unfortunately. So how do we protect that inventory from people using that are not eligible to it? How do you do that without going through some kind of validation process? I don't know.
Pete, it was a pleasure having this conversation with you. I hope you continue the good work you're doing, and hopefully by April 2022, we'll have more information about your project.
Great, thank you, Eduardo, and thanks for having me. Thank you.
Thank you. So next, we are having two follow-up with the two group discussions. One of them on accessible ticketing, and another one on the planning of the Cafe Week of Action. Thank you so much.